Welcome, everybody, to Sports Wars and Geeks and Gamers college football predictions for 2021 that we are doing these videos for each day throughout August, so you can be prepared and prepped and even take a look at possible win total bets as promoted by sportspicks.locals.com. Today, we talk about Ohio State, the Buckeyes, one of the very few teams to have won a national title in the BCS era, and brings in, once again, one of the most talented rosters in the nation. Indeed, almost right behind Alabama and Georgia is Ohio State as the third most talented team in the country. Why does that matter? Well, in the BCS playoff era, no team has won the national championship without having at least 20 NFL players in their two deep. And by players, we don't mean just people who get an invite to a camp or get a draft pick. We're talking about people who make NFL rosters, being within the two deep of the offense, not just some redshirt freshman counted years later. So Ohio State once again brings in more than that, one of only 6 teams in the entire country that bring in the requisite level of talent to win a national title. Now, what are the big questions for Ohio State? Well, it's not their schedule. They catch some breaks in that respect. Where there's some big questions is at quarterback, but they have maybe the most talented quarterback room since early 1980s Miami, when Bernie Kosar and Vinny Testaverde and others were hanging out in the same quarterback room down in Miami. The quarterback, the expected starter, is an NFL prospect, and the 3 other quarterbacks in the room are all considered top NFL prospects, including some that were considered possible number 1 overall picks. But they have never played a down, never thrown a pass for Ohio State. So that is a question yet to be answered. Otherwise, the offensive team is loaded with talent. On defense, they did lose some key personnel from last season, but again, they have extraordinary talent and depth of talent. The bigger question is whether this defensive coordinator is the answer to the riddle that has bedeviled Ryan Day during his prior 3-year stint at Ohio State. In 2 of those 3 years, his defense was simply average, despite all the talent on the defense. Only once has he had a good defense in Buckeye land, and his defensive coordinator, the one from last year, did not show a lot of promise despite all the oddities of a COVID year, making it difficult to make a full assessment. Giving up 52 points to Alabama, even an extraordinary Alabama offense, is not a great showing. And then when you compound that by giving up 35 to Indiana and about 25 or 27 or so to a weak Penn State offense last year, then that suggests not a lot of promise for the defensive coordinator. But maybe in his second season, with all of this talent, they will rebound. So those are the open questions for Ohio State. The quarterback and the defensive coordinator more so than the defensive talent, given their recruiting ratings and as well as scout assessments and our own proprietary talent analysis at sportspicks.locals.com. So let's take a look at the season. Vegas puts the win total over-under at right at 11. Do you think it's more likely Ohio State loses 2 games or goes undefeated? Well, let's take a look at the schedule and see what it suggests. Up first at Minnesota. That could be a tricky game early in the season. Minnesota can be a tough team under this particular coach. They bring back their very talented quarterback, but they also bring back their talentless defense. This is not the kind of team that is likely to trip up Ohio State, which should be favored by more than 2 touchdowns up in Minnie. And so we have Ohio State starting off the season with a bang and a big win. Up next is a quality, very quality, non-conference foe, Oregon, but they catch them in Columbus, critically catch them in Columbus. And once again, for as talented as Oregon is, as well coached as Oregon is, Oregon does not have the same talent level as Ohio State. And while this may be their most talented opponent on the entire schedule, they catch him early and they catch him in Columbus, and that combination should be enough for Ohio State to roll to victory. Then Ohio State gets Tulsa at home. Tulsa was one of the best spread covering teams over the last couple of years, depending on which year you caught them. But they are no match for Ohio State in the horseshoe. Easy win for the Buckeyes. Up next is Akron. Akron is awful. I get there in Ohio, so that's why they're playing them. They're as awful as LeBron James' PR campaign for the most recent Disney flop movie that he was in. Space Jam 2 that nobody wanted the sequel to. And that's what Akron will look like against Ohio State. The only question is, do they cover the 50-point plus spread that's likely to be present? Then Ohio State travels to Rutgers, which scored, I think, 27 points last year on Ohio State's defense, which really should not have happened. And Rutgers, while improving under Greg Schiano's return to Jersey, is nowhere near the talent level of Ohio State. This game should not be close or competitive. Then Ohio State captures the talented but questionably coached under Mike Lotzke Terrapins of Maryland. While Maryland may be game for maybe a half, we can't see this game being close or competitive very long. Easy win for Ohio State. Ohio State catches a bye before traveling to Indiana, which is probably one of the more overhyped teams in the country. We get Indiana overperformed last year. Congratulations to them. Indiana has a fun quarterback and a fun coach. They have nowhere near the talent to be a top 25 team. Last year was likely more fluke than probable outcome, and we don't see that game being close or competitive at all for the Buckeyes, despite some of the momentary scares that took place last year, almost entirely due to big plays, not due to Indiana having steady, successive drives, play by play down the field. We think Ohio State adjusts and rolls in Bloomington. Up next, Ohio State captures its second most talented opponent after Oregon, Penn State, but again, critically, at home in the Horseshoe. Ohio State, we predict, prevails again, and Penn State may give them a decent game, but not close enough to come down to the last play or two, and we see Ohio State winning again. Then Ohio State travels to Nebraska. I'm sure they'll be really pumped in Lincoln, one of the greatest fan bases in the world, but the reality is the talent differential is massive, and Scott Frost has not shown the ability to meaningfully compete with Ohio State during his tenure there and Ryan Day's tenure at Ohio State. Another double-digit victory for the Buckeyes. Up next is Purdue. Ohio State catches them at home. Purdue's a fun little team. They can pull the occasional upset. They've done it to Ohio State in the past. Not this year. Easy win, Ohio State. Then Ohio State catches Michigan State, which, too, back in the day, different coaches, different talent, different times, has pulled a wide range of wild upsets over Ohio State. It helped make Nick Saban put him on the map when he helped pull off an upset on a team that he mostly was not a good coach that year, but that's another story. But this is not that Michigan State Sparty, and they're coming into Buckeye land. This game is going to be a slaughter. Michigan State, they don't know whether they could even win 4 games in Vegas this year. Not likely to be competitive. And then, of course, it finishes up in the regular season where it always finishes up. Ohio State against Michigan. Jim Harbaugh has been owned by the Buckeyes in this rivalry, though in his defense he has often covered the spread, and some of us only care about that rather than the wins. But I'm sure the Maize and Blue and Mr. Steve of the Michigan podcast would like to see something a little different sometime soon there in Ann Arbor. And Ohio State will travel to Ann Arbor, and the question is, can they pull off a win when the last several games with Michigan look like 56-27 for Ohio State, 62-39 for Ohio State, and Ryan Day's 2 of his 3 prior seasons that he has played Michigan, he has not been merciful. We don't see Michigan being competitive with Ohio State this year either. They do have more talent than people are giving them credit for. There's people writing them off prematurely, and Jim Harbaugh, before his Michigan tenure, was seen as a highly successful, overachieving coach. And people forget, Michigan has mostly been a solid team during Harbaugh's reign. He just hasn't taken them to the promised land of beating the Buckeyes. And he is, of course, more obsessed with beating the Buckeyes than anybody. So he has a chance. He has a fighter's chance, but he doesn't have a likely chance. We see the Buckeyes going 12-0 and recommend Ohio State over the win total of 11 at sportspicks.com, sportspicks.locals.com, where you can get free football picks and predictions all year. Remember, everybody, like, share, and subscribe here to Sports Wars and Geeks and Gamers so you can continue to get free sports information all year long. Thanks, everybody.